Okay, we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Confessions of a Fitness Manager podcast. My name is Staci, as always, here with Jessica Rogers from Chicago. We are here to speak to, last episode we spoke to the finale, the grand finale of hiring, and now we're taking you on a journey into your first initial days or weeks of onboarding a new instructor, personal trainer, or Pilates teacher. Just because it's tradition. What are you drinking, Jessica?
Oh, Staci, I am finishing off this delicious mug of hot chocolate from our Park City trip.
And
What are
how much
you
whipped
drinking?
cream do you have in that hot
Oh,
chocolate?
it's pretty melted. I went through like three squirts of whipped cream. Is that what the proper terminology? It
I'd
sounds
say that
gross, but
works.
three squirts of whipped cream on my hot chocolate. It is now melted, but it is delicious
Oh,
and keeping me toasty on this 15-degree day.
that
Thank you,
sounds
Chicago winters.
so tasty and sweet, super sweet.
Very sweet,
I'm
yes.
again just drinking my good old, simple, straightforward iced water. It's keeping me refreshed.
Delicious. Delicious. That's probably what I
Delicious.
should be drinking after this because this is a big mug, but it's it's where we're at right now.
It's where we're
It's
at.
need,
I know in this
it's
time
needed
of,
for this episode.
yes, it is. We have some stories for you, big stories for you,
Mm-hmm.
career changing stories that both of us,
Absolutely.
for one of them, we both
Absolutely.
got to experience together. But once again, we're speaking about onboarding, and we wanted to, since we like that entertaining piece to the stories and the drama that sometimes we experience as fitness managers, we wanted to speak to some of the stories of people that we've gotten to this point where we are onboarding them. We are welcoming them to the team, and then issues start to arise, big issues
Mm.
start to arise. So, one initial story we want to tell, and then actually, I want to say from there, we're going to take you into some practical, tactical tips. So, ways to make sure your onboarding goes smoothly, ways to prevent these potential issues from happening. But honestly, let's be
Mm-hmm.
honest, there's no way to prevent this
No.
from happening.
No.
I don't feel like there is. So let's begin the storytelling. So Jessica and myself, as you know, or if you've heard our intro episode, remember that we initially started together as a team of managers at a luxury health club facility with that offered personal training, group fitness, and private Pilates. We took on this new personal trainer. We'll call her Mary, and she came to us with a decent amount of experience, but had also, I think actually I'm remembering now, one, I think, potential red flag could have been she'd done a lot of moving. She had been moving
Mm-hmm.
around, moving careers, moving around, and then made her way to this area, the Seattle area, landed in our lap as an applicant, and we were in pretty good need of personal trainers.
Mm-hmm.
We took a look at her resume, brought her in for an audition. The audition went really well. She
Mm-hmm.
knew her stuff. She gave the client what they needed, but also gave them a really good workout. And sometimes we were finding, I think, at this facility that some personal trainers were trying to be careful with their clients, maybe like not getting them moving quite as much. And we
Mm-hmm.
were excited to see someone who had this obvious passion for teaching and coaching
Yeah.
someone, was really absorbed in her clients. And we were both excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward through interview after interview, brought her in for her final interview, started onboarding her, making the decision to bring her on the team. And we started to see issues really right away. So Jessica, I'll let
Mm-hmm.
her share
All
the
right.
story. I mean, as much as you can about the
So
issue she had with this instructor first.
So Mary, right off the bat, I mean, Mary was great coming into the club, and I was actually her test body. I remember that,
Oh
and it was
yeah,
great. Like
yeah,
I would have bought whatever she had sold. If she told me that I
yeah,
needed to come and see her for sessions 5 days a week, I would have been like, fine. Like that's
yeah,
how good her audition was.
yeah.
So right off the bat, we noticed some red flags after we officially brought her on as part of the team. We had given her an offer. She had accepted. We bring her on for onboarding. Right away, she was having issues with other members of our team. And we had a very large team. We had a team of over 100. And one of the things that we had her do for her onboarding was to shadow another trainer. So we had her shadowing another trainer who was a really consistent, positive trainer of ours. And she started correcting the client in front of the trainer without the trainer's permission. Just essentially saying, I think you should be doing this, and I want you to do this instead, just completely disregarding what our trainer was trying to get her experienced client to do. So right away, that trainer came up to us and was just like, what's going on? Like that was completely unacceptable and inappropriate and threw me off. And Mary didn't think she did anything wrong there. She was just like, well, it's my job to make people strong and healthy. And that's what I was doing. And you weren't doing it the right way. That was the feedback she was giving our one trainer, that you weren't doing it right. And which is not for her to judge another trainer. This was like week one of the job. So she was doing that. One of the things that Staci and I would have our team do during onboarding was attend classes and connect with other trainers and instructors. And Mary would come into our office and just like sit there quite a lot.
Yeah.
Don't you remember that? She would just
totally
like sit there.
Remember this. Just
like I would walk in there and she would just be sitting there, and I would just be like, Mary, what are you doing? And she was just like, I'm just hanging out. I'm like, we have a trainer lounge right down the hall. That is the appropriate spot to just hang out. She's like, no, I want to hang out here. Well, this is a working office. Like this is not.
We're not going to be chatting with you. We're not going to be having conversations. Like we are working on a lot of other things.
Yeah. So it was just kind of bizarre. It was just kind of a little bizarre behavior. But I think at that point, like we were so excited about her as a trainer, we kind of overlooked some red flags. Like in hindsight, we overlooked some things. And so at that point, I remember another of our group fitness instructors came into the office, and this is a yoga instructor, or I believe at the time she wasn't a yoga instructor, but she was a yoga enthusiast.
Yeah, she was taking yoga, but she wasn't actually.
She was taking yoga, but she wasn't teaching it. So this particular instructor was doing like some kind of social media challenge where she was doing a different yoga pose every day. So she asked me, hey, will you come into the lobby over here and do a yoga pose with me that I could post on social media? And I'm like, absolutely. So Mary happened to be sitting there, and I'm like, hey, Mary, will you come and take this photo of us? We're going to do a yoga pose. And for some reason, Mary did not like yoga. I'm not quite sure what exactly I don't know what she had against yoga, but she's following us down the hall into the lobby and is just ranting about how awful yoga is. And I remember stopping her at one point, and I'm like, we are a multi-service health club, and we do offer yoga. So we have members who want to take yoga, and we are going to support them in their journey of taking yoga. So, and I just kind of shut that down because I didn't know what her response to yoga was. And so I'm asking this one instructor, like, what pose do you want us to do? So she puts us in a yoga pose, and I give Mary the camera, and Mary asks the instructor, oh, are you a yoga teacher? And she's like, no, I don't teach yoga. I just like yoga, which came an incredibly inappropriate and racist response that was, you would be a good yoga teacher because you're Indian. And at that point, I'm like,
what?
Like, once I heard that with my own ears, and then it got to the point where that poor instructor emailed me and asked to have a sit down with me because she didn't feel comfortable coming into the club after that, which is just horrible. It's just horrible. And that's not an experience you want for any instructor or any member, anyone ever, really. You don't want anyone to be that uncomfortable. But that was the first comment that I heard from her, and I was like, Anne, I'm done with her. We're done. So Staci, why don't you take it from here? Because we can go on all day. It kept going with Mary. It was never ending.
Keeps going is incredible.
It keeps going. Yes.
So those, and of course, this is the interesting thing that I have to admit is fascinating, is when these things start to happen, they do tend to have some space to them. So the challenge is things are quiet for a little bit, like things start to be okay and settle down and then go okay. And then sure enough, something else is going to happen. So what you can do as a manager is do your absolute best is when this does happen. And I wasn't there, Jessica was, and the wonderful thing was that she was there, and I trust Jessica's opinion and her judgment. I took down when and where and how this happened. We did address it with human resources right away. We took the proper steps, but it is important to do that right away, because even if you think it's not that big of a deal, it has to be handled because it becomes a record of what had happened. So that's our biggest piece of advice, is do that right away. There may have been other times where I didn't do that because I was like, oh, it's not as big of a thing. I'll definitely have a sit down with her, still take it seriously, but I'm not going to like put it on the record. do take your time to put it on the record, because she also needed to see that we were taking it seriously. And if we had actually written her up for that comment, things may have happened a bit differently, but we didn't. We were, we were like, maybe she's insensitive and not understanding. And, you try to give them the benefit of the doubt, but you really should, you're doing the right thing if you handle it in a more extreme manner. Continue, fast forward, I think we had more instructors and personal trainers and just random people come into our office upset about the things that this particular girl was saying to them, saying, like, as Jessica said, judging the way they're teaching. We had trainees who were learning how to teach and to train clients, who were also being assessed by her, being watched by her, being judged by her, and were bringing their feedback to us. And then sure enough, it started to happen. This is where the weird blurred lines of social media get challenging. That's their personal space. That's stuff that happens outside of the facility. So you don't have a lot of jurisdiction when it comes to that. But if your team is following them and has screenshots, you can save that information. Our particular facility at this time, unfortunately, and I don't actually know if they have a social media policy yet to this date, which is disgusting to me, because every facility should have some form, if they can, of a social media policy. And I think I've written about this in the past, so maybe I'll like save an article or something, or reference on how to make a social media policy, because it's super important that happens. That they sign the dotted line that they're not going to say inappropriate things, or obviously, I mean, in her case, she wasn't necessarily saying names, but she was very obviously speaking to our team on her social media page.
And what was interesting about this case was, and this was a couple years pre-pandemic, but Mary ended up going on Facebook, and she essentially friended every single person from our department that she could find, like well over 100 people she may or may not have even met in person, but it just saw that she was, employed at this club as a personal trainer. So people accepted her as a friend, and then very quickly started to go on these awful rants about mostly you, Staci, on Facebook. Started to do these
so
terrible,
bad.
terrible.
I was like, what's going on?
and so I've never had so many instructors text me just to be like, are you seeing what's going on this girl's Facebook page? Like, what, like, I don't know. I've never been in that situation. What am I supposed to do there? So I mean, I was taking screenshots just to have on record, but there wasn't a whole lot I could do, because it was her personal social media.
Yeah, so that's where the biggest challenge arose, was we could not do much. Our human resources team couldn't do much. And that's where, like I said earlier, the sooner you can get human resources involved, the better. The story gets better, because then she unfortunately lost her basically living facility. She couldn't live where she was originally living, moved in with in a space that our facility had offered her. She moved in with a roommate who happened to work at the facility we were working in, and that became a big issue. So it just continued to escalate, snowball, and we finally were able to just cut ties. The human resources department at that point was becoming really involved, because they were helping her with housing at that point. And it was obvious that there was something that she honestly needed help with. She needed help identifying, how to coerce with people and work with people and genuinely be a teammate. And it was not going to work at our facility. So we finally were able to say goodbye to her, but it's just it's incredible what can happen quickly with a new instructor. And we're speaking to onboarding in regards to the first phase. So we will follow up with this episode with the next phase. But this initial phase was when we were more hands-on with the instructor. We were like watching them, we were training them on the really day-to-day tasks. But I'll let Jessica share her story now.
Oh, so this is a completely different story. So Mary, I will say without a doubt, was my worst hire ever. Like hands down.
Me
hands
too.
down. The worst hire, like it will be a challenge to beat that. And hopefully no one ever will. Someone close though, and you'll hear about that in the next onboarding episode. But I recently, this is not as entertaining as Mary's story, but I recently hired a personal trainer at my current facility, who Was fantastic. Had a great interview, great audition, was really personable, hired him on the spot after his audition. I've never seen anyone have such a great audition. And he was great. And he was currently doing personal training. He was doing like home personal training. So we didn't really have an actual facility, but he wanted to wrap a couple things up with his clients, which I totally understand. I respect that. So I would expect if someone was leaving my facility to go on in their journey that they would give us the same grace. So I understood that. So we like stopped his process like midweek because he wanted to use the rest of the week to wrap things up with his clients. Came on back the next week. My facility, we typically do about 4 days of actual sit down and going over policies and procedures and the using our software and emails, and it's, you know, all the boring stuff that we all love to go over with trainers. So went through that fine. And then we typically spend another week or so just shadowing other trainers and being visible at the club. I'll have them take some small group training classes because our trainers also teach small group training, have some time at the front desk to just kind of understand different ways the facility operates. So we're going through his onboarding. And after about the first week, we finished his policies and procedures and all that boring stuff. And the following week, I was setting his schedule on who he's going to shadow and what classes he's going to take. And he said that he wants to push it out another few days. So again, he could wrap up some things with his clients. And I'm just thinking, well, like, how many clients do you have? So like, we want to get you going. When we interviewed you, when you did your audition, you were saying like you could start tomorrow. So at this point, I'm a little thrown off that like we have to wait another couple of days to really get him going because I have members that I want to put with him. We have a lot of people who want to do personal training. So one thing that's I think a little unique to my club is we do nightly recaps for our upper management. So it's just a general like time to write things that happen throughout the day, questions you may have, to open up a dialogue with some senior management. So one of the things that I put in my recap that night was just was working on onboarding this guy, really excited for him to start. He's not going to start for another couple of days, kind of bummed about that. He wants to tie up some loose ends and get things started. So what was interesting there was that night I got an email from the personal training director at one of our sister clubs. And it was just like, oh, that's so weird. I just had an audition with a guy of the same name this day. I get a feeling he's looking around for other jobs. And he has a somewhat unique name. So I'm just like, okay, that's not a coincidence. So the next day, I'm a little bit upset. I talked to my general manager about it because, you know, really threw me off because this guy was excited. He accepted the position. We were in the middle of onboarding. So I give him a call and he right away, I said, you know, we heard that you had interviewed over at our sister club. I mean, Staci.
That's hilarious. You have to laugh. It's so sad.
Can I say it? Can I say it? He was a fucking idiot. He interviewed at our sister club.
What did he think was going to happen?
What did he think was going to happen? He was a fucking idiot. So we'll just put a little explicit on that.
Yeah, so we got it.
He didn't deny it. He said that he did, and he just wanted to see if the other location would be a better fit. But right away, he knew that it wasn't, and which caused our response to be, you know, how do we know that you're loyal to us because you accepted our position, and how do we know that you're not looking elsewhere? Which then became a whole thing with him of, oh, you know, I commute from the suburbs to downtown. So what if there's a better spot for me out in the suburbs? I'm like, well, yeah, there probably is. I mean, this is the suburbs of Chicago. I know, like, I know where you're from. There's probably 10 clubs closer to you than would be coming here, but you came to us. So I don't know what you were thinking. And then it became a whole thing of like, oh, my girlfriend lives in the city and I could stay at these are things that he's talking to me about after I busted him for this interview. It actually, like, he was actually
saying, like, I'm not your life coach. I am here.
He was just like, well, my girlfriend lives, right? He's like, my girlfriend lives in the city and I could stay with my girlfriend. But what happens if my girlfriend and I break up? I'm like, that's not my problem, man. Like,
I'm not your life coach.
It was so bizarre. And so I'm just like, you know what, like this isn't going to work out. I need someone who's committed to the team. And that was it. So that was my onboarding story. That was a really, really big disappointment.
Yeah. Oh, that sucks. It sucked. I
Yeah,
remember
it
you
totally
updating
sucks.
me on that situation and just feeling for you because it really is emotional. And you can't help
It
but
was
feel
so
that way.
awful. Yeah.
You're excited about this person. You're working really hard to onboard them. Like, I don't know if the
Yeah.
credit is goes where credit's due. Like, some facilities may like really could use a boost and improvement in their onboarding process. I'm sure they're
Hmm.
out there, but I know between you and myself and a lot of other managers I know, we work really hard in making that onboarding comfortable,
Hmm.
as relaxed and not stressful because starting a new job is very stressful. So we have it all
Hmm.
timed out to a T. We do our best to be patient, to help the clients be patient, to pair them with the right people, to be there to
Hmm.
hold their hands, and then to be burned like that in the worst way
That
is
that
it
one
was so
hurt.
disappointing. That
Yeah.
so hurts. So hurts.
Yeah.
So knowing all of this could happen. You never know. It's not your fault. And it's not your job to help life coach someone through their decision and where they should work. You just hire them. And if they don't choose to work with you, that's on them. Like they say la vie, do whatever the hell you want. Like we're not working with you anymore. So speaking of which, as Jessica mentioned earlier, like the onboarding process, this first maybe week or 2 weeks, in her case, I think it's like 2 or 3 weeks. For I guess we'll start with maybe a group fitness instructor. They do tend to be easier to onboard, but what does that process? We'll describe kind of really what our processes look like. So I'm hiring remotely currently. All of my team is remote. I ask them instead of an audition, as I spoke to earlier, they send me a recording of their class. So my process looks a little interesting. How we have them on board is I do a virtual onboarding session. So we do a 1 hour onboarding session where I actually, if those of you who are onboarding remotely, I highly recommend doing a Zoom, sharing your screen, talking them through everything and how to, like we had talked about, maybe track attendance in classes, how to clock in and out, how to see their pay. And while you're training them, record the meeting. So I've learned this. This really helps because in the future they'll come back to me and go, "How do I do this?" And I'll be like, "We did it in onboarding. I'll explain it here." But it's really nice to have that recording to lean on so that they can review it for themselves as well before they start reaching out to you with a bunch of questions. So record that onboarding, send them the link, share with them the next steps that they need to take, and then check in on them. That's the hardest part about being remote is remembering to check on your team. So I highly recommend, however you can, if maybe you told them to update their picture on their profile, keep checking in, put it on your calendar to check in and see if they updated their profile. Did they update their bio? Did they upload a video of themselves introducing themselves to clients? So those are things that I have to do in my onboarding for instructors. I know Jessica and myself have also found value, if you can, in having instructors team teach together when they first start teaching at a
Mhm.
facility. It just it gives them the opportunity to kind of see an instructor teach so you can either do it. I guess we've mostly done it so that like they teach a portion of the class, the other instructor teaches a portion, and it gets your team to kind of work with them and introduce them to teaching, and then it gets participants, I think, going, "Who's this person?" Like
Mhm.
curious about them, but in a positive way, so that hopefully when they start teaching their own classes, those people are intrigued by taking their class versus, continuing to go to the same people they always go to. But any
Mhm.
other insight that you have for hiring just instructors
For
for
instructors, I
onboarding?
think yeah, I think for onboarding, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. One of the things that you and I had talked about earlier was giving them that a small little gift. It's just like a token of your appreciation, which I think is
Yeah.
super cute. So we used to have at our old club, we would give them a little personalized notebook for them to write choreography or take notes or do what they want with. So it's just a nice little gesture of welcoming them onto the team.
Yeah, and I know some facilities do like gift cards or
Mhm.
flowers or something or a shirt, like a club shirt. So I think that helps people feel like, they're welcome. Another thing I know Jessica and I did was really took the time, if we could, to introduce them to other people. So walk them around the
Mhm.
facility. Remotely, you could invite them specifically to that first team meeting that they can come to, and you can be like, "Hey, everyone, just want to introduce this new instructor we have in Orlando," or something. Give them that chance to have the spotlight for a second. And if they are comfortable, they can introduce themselves. Something else we did, which was fun, was we had a Facebook group that was just for,
Oh yeah.
just for like fun stuff. It wasn't for sub
Mm-hmm.
requests. It wasn't for anything else. It was just a fun space for people to
Mm-hmm.
share things were happening in their lives, for us to share what was happening in people's lives. So birthdays, birth
Mm-hmm.
announcements. One thing we did was we would even start taking a quick interview of myself or
Yeah.
Jessica, like
I
selfie
remember
version of
those.
the
Yeah.
camera with them sitting right here and just saying, meet this instructor. They're going to be teaching these days and times. And we do that for
Mm-hmm.
personal trainers too, and Pilates teachers. And they are going to say a little bit about themselves. And they would just say, hey, I'm so and so. I'm from this place. Here's my experience. I'm so excited to work with the team. And it was just
Mm-hmm.
another way for people to get some
Yeah.
insight. Because you're meeting with this person all the time, but your team isn't seeing this person at all. So
Right.
it's kind of a bummer for that new instructor to like walk into a like meeting or like walk into the staff lounge like you said and feel super alone and not and
Mm-hmm.
unsure, and if someone recognized them from that video and goes, oh hey, you're that instructor, and
Mm-hmm.
starts a conversation, how much better that experience could be, which is
Right.
really
And
cool.
instructors, as we know, are pretty outgoing. So if they see
Yeah.
someone that they recognize, then they'll just
Yeah.
welcome them with open arms.
Yes, absolutely. And so what about for personal trainers? What are some of the, like you said, the more boring things and then the more extensive things
Yeah.
you do?
So the boring things, we typically sit down, we carve out a few days just to go over just general orientation stuff, uniforms, software, emails. I'll give them like little email templates that they can use but they can modify if they want. We
Mhm.
do how to do sub requests for small groups, that sort of thing, or if they go on vacation, how to get their clients covered, all the boring stuff that no one ever likes to do that the trainer probably forgot about like 10 minutes after leaving the meeting,
Yeah,
you know. Uh, but
absolutely.
I will also put them with one of our lead trainers to do training specifically on their consultation. So most clubs
Mhm.
will offer some kind of complimentary consultation to bring a client into the personal training world. So I will typically book a session or two to have the new trainer work with our lead trainer. So it's a nice opportunity for them to see a different style of training. So it's not just me talking to them. I'm sure they're bored of that. So if you have the opportunity, if you have some lead trainers on your staff, carve out a little bit of time to have them actually be a leader and train other trainers or other instructors on board. So that's one thing I really like to do with my team as
Mhm.
well.
That's so smart. And it gives that lead trainer more of a feeling of like, I'm helping my team, like you said, like
Mm-hmm.
actually act like a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that initial consultation, I've done a million of them. I've done a million
Right.
initial consultations as a personal trainer and a Pilates teacher, and you learn something every time you do one.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully that also gives someone, once they've been trained by that lead, the opportunity to have someone to lean on. So they're not just having to
Right.
lean on us as their direct supervisor, but also go, okay, I did my initial training with this trainer. I'm going to try and catch
Right.
them. I have some questions about this client.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They sometimes they're a little bit more comfortable with the lead trainer than they are with
Yeah.
their manager. It's just not as
Mhm.
intimidating. So they might open up
Yeah.
or ask some more questions to the lead trainer, the lead instructor than they would for someone on the
Mhm.
management team.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
And just another hack that I think Jessica and I identified over time and leading a team was, it's a hack for hiring and it's a hack for, I think, introducing people for the whole team, is having your own in-house training. It is not easy to
Mhm.
do, but I know more and more clubs, like, I mean, Lifetime is a good example. I don't know if 24 Hour does it, but they actually have their own like personal training certification that you can get with their
Mhm.
facility. Or, there's a lot of Pilates studios out there that have their own certification, and
Right.
we led a certification, and I feel like what it did is it also put our lead instructor Beth as more seen as a leader in that facility. She was
Mhm.
able to, be the person who trained them on every exercise, and we found that her relationship with those instructors who went through the training was even
Mhm.
stronger than the
Mhm.
ones who we'd hired from the outside. And we had to do that, which was hard, but I think that that's another really big hack if you can figure out how to do that. Maybe we'll do an episode
Yeah.
on that, how to do that, how to
Yeah.
it's hard. It's
That would be
possible,
great.
but it is really it's invaluable if you can make it happen.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and I mean, that's all I can really think about. The other ways, just really doing your best to help them feel comfortable, hopefully even
Mhm.
introducing them to people outside of your department. So introducing them
Right.
to the front desk team,
Mhm.
And you spoke to earlier, like carving out time, like they really don't have a lot of a schedule initially. So if you
Mhm.
can try to make their schedule pretty consistent initially,
Mhm.
that can be really helpful. But if it can
Mhm.
kind of line up to when they're going to be coming in normally, that's helpful too.
Mhm.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, and it's all about setting those expectations right now too. I would say that's huge.
Mhm.
Be as crystal
Yeah.
clear on when they need to be reading their email, how often they need to be responding. Are there ways for them to check that they have read something? If you happen to use GroupX Pro, the software, I loved using. There's a Reddit checkbox that helps you see, helps instructors share. Like I read this, I did this on my own. So doing that, I think, is really important as a
Mhm.
leader to keep track of everyone, keep track of everything. Um, but yeah, I
Absolutely.
think that's it. That's all I
Yeah,
got.
I'd just say last thing I can think of is find a time to check in with them after they've gone through the onboarding
Yes.
process, whether it's 30 days, 90 days, whatever it is. Have a set time, put it in your calendar, whatever you need. But once you release them into the wild, you still want them
Mhm.
to feel supported. So make a
Yeah.
time to have a sit down with them just to check in and see how things are going. Maybe they're doing really well and they're crystal clear on everything, or maybe they're a little bit lost still and they need a little bit more support. So you don't want to completely set them free. You still want to be there to support them.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think our future episode, which is perfect, will be a little bit more about what are some things you can address in that 60,
Mhm.
90-day meeting, whatever you determine is a good kind of cadence to have that meeting. Who do you want to be there? What do you want to address? And then, really, what does the second stage of onboarding look like? Your first stage is very hands on, very with them at all times, but what's your second stage? How are you maintaining
Mhm.
your touch with them, making sure that they're
Mhm.
continuing their education, that they're participating in services in the facility,
Right.
and staying on top of things. So I think that's really really helpful. And I think, even actually, really quick, back to like the initial weeks of onboarding, I even determined with a couple instructors that they needed like a checklist, like a daily checklist. I remember this for a couple
Yeah.
instructors, because there's a lot to do depending on the facility.
Mhm.
If you have them clocking in and out, they have to remember that. If they have to
Mhm.
find
Yeah.
keys and access those, remembering
But
that. The
they had like
habits,
different codes that they needed to
codes.
memorize, like code to get into like the key box,
Yeah,
code to get into the lounge, code to get into like the front door. Like there were all
yeah.
kinds of codes. Like who memorized that?
No, yeah. So if you can create like a PDF cheat sheet or something, or a small little like card that they can have, or something for them, hacks, like ways to make it easier, because you want to make it easy, even though that is hard. Like starting a new job,
Mhm.
learning all these new things is really challenging. So being
Mhm.
there for them is really important. And then they're just going to be a better instructor and better trainer,
Yeah.
better Pilates teacher for you. And it does happen. We have good stories too. Of good
We just
quality
share the
people too.
bad ones because yeah, we have great instructors, great trainers, we have great stories. But our more fun stories are the fails. So that's what
Yep.
we're sharing because
Yeah.
you probably, if you're listening, you probably have some fails too. So
Yeah.
you are not alone with that. You are doing everything right. There are just sometimes we just have bad hires and that's just
Yeah.
life.
And they're just unfortunately not talked about anyways. So it's like, why not?
Yeah.
We'll be the sounding board for that. Why not? We've made mistakes. Here they are. We're learning from them and we're moving on.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for the next episode, episode 2 of this onboarding series, and then we'll be going into some even more nitty gritty of really management um, hacks and ways to lead your team, along with, of course, some fun, entertaining stories. But we'll see you next time on the next episode.
Bye.